everyone, it's Laura at the Fort Erie Public Library, and we're here today to talk about transferring photos to Canvas using Mod Podge. Here's my finished product. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do this at home. Two things to be aware of. One is that here I've chosen to kind of rip the edges for a vintage effect. I'll talk about how to do that or how to avoid that if it's not a look you're going for. And a very important PSA is that when you're applying your Mod Podge to your photo, you want to make sure you're applying it to the side of the photo that has the ink. If you apply it to the back, like I did, you're going to end up with something that looks like this. So that's not as good, right? Unless, if that's what you want, go ahead. But let's make sure we put the Mod Podge on the right side of the photo. The other thing to note is that your photo is going to end up flipped. So if you're trying to do something with writing, unfortunately it's not going to turn out. But let's get started and let's have some fun. Your craft kit has a flat canvas and a photo that has come from a laser printer, as well as Mod Podge. You're going to take the Mod Podge and using the sponge that comes with your craft kit, that's not what I'm using in this video, but use that. I'm going to smooth the Mod Podge on to a thin, even layer. Then I'm going to put it photo side down onto the canvas. This step is very important. I want to make sure I get all the air bubbles out and that it's completely stuck to the canvas. Here's something that I do wrong. Do not put Mod Podge on the back of the photo. Now I'm going to use a credit card, or actually in this case my library card, to smooth out all the air bubbles. I want this to be so dry that I can see the texture of the canvas poking through the paper, if that makes sense. Then I'm going to leave it to dry overnight, if not longer. You can see it is 100% dry. I'm going to take the sponge that comes with my craft kit, make sure I've washed all the Mod Podge out, and wet it with water. Then I am going to saturate the photo. So this takes about 2 minutes. You might have to dab water on and then leave it to absorb, but you want it to get to a point where you can see the ink through the wet paper. So I want to be able to see my photo through the wet paper. Now that the paper is wet, I'm going to take my finger and very, very gently rub away that top layer of paper. You can see the paper curling up into little bits. That's great. This is a messy craft, so make sure you're working on a counter that you can wipe clean afterwards. I'm going to slowly rub away that top layer of paper, taking care to only rub the parts of the paper that are wet enough to come away. If I rub on the dry paper, it's just going to rip and make a hole. Here's a close-up for you. You can see the layers of paper coming away. So before I try to rub any more paper off, I'm going to make sure it's wet and translucent. So you're going to be using your sponge a lot to make sure that paper is the right amount of wet. To get that vintage effect that I showed you at the beginning of the video, you want to rub straight through all the layers of paper so that you can see the canvas. I've left my canvas to dry, and you can see that there's kind of a cloudy film on it. This is just a layer of paper. So what I'm going to do is just repeat the process. This time I'm going to use a damp sponge. I don't need to use my finger anymore. You can just lightly rub it with the sponge. I want to try to get some of those little paper rolls to see that the paper's coming up. And that's going to give me a clearer, sharper image. Because I made a couple mistakes where I ripped holes, I decided to go for that vintage look. Here's my finished product. Hope you enjoy this craft.